I know back in the day when we play Saturdays, we would fight as a staff who would get to go scout at Hammonton, and it was all because of a snack bar.
Tonight's Chuck Smith Show, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service, is also brought to you by our loyal sponsors. Charlie's Bar and Restaurant, located at 800 Shore Road in Summers Point. Meet your friends at Charlie's at the shore since 44. Chico & Son Sub Shop, located at 1620 Tilton Road, Northfield. Choose the #1 sub shop in South Jersey. And the Docks Place, located at 646 Bay Avenue in Summers Point. Book your dinner reservations now at 609-926-0404. Thank you for your support of Mainland Regional Football.
But when you have a solid program, a lot of that can take over what an individual might do. Before he releases the ball, he takes a shot right as he releases it here. And for him to stand in there in the face of that, and that's just the confidence that he has. And I found myself just trying to catch my breath for a bit because of the excitement and just the pressure of that moment. This is a game that the kids, you live for.
This is the Chuck Smith Show on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Now, here's Coach Smith and your host, Nick Kosko.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. With me, as he is every week, is Mainland head coach Chuck Smith. Coach, good to talk to you again as we transition into week 1, week 0. I know that's still a thing, but we're getting rid of that now. We're into September. School's underway in most areas in Jersey, if not underway by the end of the week. You guys will head in and play Hammonton on the road this coming Friday, but first we'll recap what went down in Delaware on Friday. Unfortunately for you guys, 25-8 loss to Atlantic City, a very tough and fast Atlantic City team. So we'll just start right there. Just what went down in that game. I know you guys were down a little bit big at halftime, but tried to make a late rally, but ultimately came up short. So what was your general takeaways from this game on last Friday?
Yeah, nothing. My hat's off to Atlantic City. They came ready to play the football game, and we weren't ready for it. We knew we had two things we had to do was block and tackle speed and space, and there were two things that really hurt us. We started off the game well. We drove down the field. We had a botched field goal attempt, and their very first play on offense, they hit a 90-yard touchdown. It's not just all the kids. I think there were some things that the coaches, staff could have done a little bit better, putting the kids in a better position to be successful. Not going to say we would have won the game. Atlantic City really outplayed us in every aspect of the game. But that being said, for as poorly as we played, we were still in a position, 13-0 in the fourth quarter to have a chance to still be in the football game, But we sputtered on offense. We had a hard time blocking. And on defense, we did a really just a bad job tackling, So we really went back to the drawing board this past week. And sometimes when those things happen, you got to take a step back, maybe 2 steps back before you can take another step forward. And that's kind of was the emphasis this week, just getting back to attention to detail and the basics.
When you mentioned, I'll start with the offense first. As far as the blocking is concerned, you guys have been known, especially the last couple of years, where your blocking is outstanding. You've raved pretty much week to week about how your offensive line works in cohesion, how your backs are blocking. Even if they don't get 10 carries a game, they're always blocking, they're always getting out in front. Was it schematic? Was it Atlantic City speed? A combination of both? What really went wrong? I would say early on, where at that point you guys were like, all right, we need to try to put together a quick rally on the fly here.
I think, we had some critical mistakes early. We were moving the ball, and then we kind of missed an assignment down low, and then we had a 2nd and 1 that led. Next thing you know, it's 3rd and 9. Just some plays that just really shot ourselves in the foot, and not many high school teams are good enough to make up a deficit in a series of downs, and that we found ourselves doing that too often on Friday. But Atlantic City brought it to us. They played a great defensive game. I think what it is too. Like we had some guys that have been injured all summer, and they finally were playing in their first game. So, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but that was their first time playing, and also the adrenaline rush and all that, and they hadn't played any preseason time at all. And we have a few new starters up on the front on the offensive line, and but we got to do a better job schematically also as coaching staff to put the kids in a better spot to be successful.
on the defensive side, you mentioned tackling in space. I believe you said that after the game as well. Basically immediately after, like, yeah, that was a glaring problem for us against Atlantic City. When I know we've talked about them leading into this game, and of course over the last couple of years, how fast they are year to year. They can be up or down depending upon how the program is year to year, but they're always fast, they're always physical, and they can always burn you in space. Was it just a couple missed tackles, and all of a sudden they're breaking a lot of plays like that first touchdown, or was it did that kind of just, I guess, roll? It was like a boulder rolling down the hill throughout the rest of the course of the game.
Tackling's passion to me. You either want to do it or you're not going to do it. We've been fortunate over the years of really taking pride in how fast we are on defense and swarming to the football. And I think the other day we saw a case of us kind of letting up as we were approaching the ball carrier, and you can't do that with Atlantic City. Kids are like that, because they can put a little move on you and boom, they're gone. That's what happened several times in the game on Friday. We were kind of stopping, not running our feet to step on toes, and they were able to shake it and break a couple tackles and gain more yardage or make a huge play out of it, which happened a couple times too. So we went back to the drawing board this week and really emphasize tackling. Hey, listen, football is an easy game. It's blocking and tackling. If you don't do those things, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. When you go back to the drawing board, and that's something that you've rarely had to do over the last 3 years, considering your playoff runs. What does that look like over the weekend? Is it just like, all right, we're going to watch this film real quick? It's pretty simple what we missed, and we obviously shot ourselves in the foot, as you alluded to before. Again, missed field goal, and all of a sudden leads to a big play. Is it as simple as like, all right, here it is. Here's the 5 plays that we can highlight that are pretty much a similar theme, and then right back to work? What does a weekend look like after?
Yeah. I mean, we came in the next morning, as a team, watched the film. Film never lies. That's why you do it. You hear things during the game. I didn't do this or I didn't do that or whatever, and listen, we're very transparent when we have our film sessions. It's not all about the kids making mistakes too. We own up as coaches. We own up, if I make a bad call during a game, I tell the kids, hey, that was my bad. We were just as accountable as they are. It's not just pointing fingers at kids all the time. Yeah. But, there's a lot of things I think the kids saw. It was evident on tape that we could just a little bit more passion, a little bit more effort on some things, and we all know once football season starts, it goes fast.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I was trying to emphasize to the kids, especially our seniors, like once this thing goes, man, it's over in a heartbeat, and we all been through this and we all know it. And it seems like it takes forever for the season to get there once you're in the off season. And now we're right in the beginning of it, and you're going to sneeze, and next thing you know, we're at Thanksgiving. And, so I think the kids really took a lot to heart on Saturday. And, we haven't started off the season 0-1 in quite some time now, and we know we have our work cut out for us this Friday too against Hammonton.
When you go back to, I'll go back to the drawing board phrase here. Now that school's underway too, maybe it's more of a routine. I know, this is for everybody. It's not just you guys where it's like, oh yeah, Mainland's back into a routine. All of a sudden, we're gonna be better for that. But I guess from a general sense, I guess getting back into a routine, you think that will help the kids as well, considering, well, we went through the summer, we played an out-of-state game, and now we're back to almost like your regular scheduled programming here.
Yeah, I guess, we all know when school comes, what Tuesday's going to be like, what Wednesday's going to be like, Thursday, it's all spelled out. But, I think, I don't know, because we kind of run the same routine all summer long.
Yeah.
So the kids are used to it. But I think, sometimes when we've had the success we've had, I think sometimes you tend to rest on your laurels a little bit. And, nobody's laying down for Mainland. They're all, we're circling probably almost everybody's schedule. And I think the kids see that now. You got to work just as hard, if not harder, when you have that type of success and you want to have goals like we do. It's not going to come easy. You got to go out and get it and earn it. And I think, they understood that this week.
Yeah, and as far as looking ahead to Hammonton here, again, they're coming off a win, first win for head coach Pat Lancetta over there. I know he's back in the high school game for the first time in a long time. And before we get a deeper look at the Blue Devils this week on the road, you mentioned the 0-1 start where it hasn't happened for you guys in a while. Again, when you look at your regular season schedules over the last couple of years, whether they're tough or whether you blitz by them, you pretty much say, hey, September, we're winning a lot of games. We're getting a lot of momentum going. Do you sense maybe a flip in how you kind of alluded to before? The kids are like, oh yeah, it's not going to be this easy every year where we're basically going to pencil in a bunch of wins right here before we get to the quote unquote hard stuff. Did you sense maybe a flip in the mentality for the kids the last couple of days?
Yeah. We don't want to be 0-2. Yeah. Nobody wants to be 0-2. That's a tough thing to go, especially with the schedule we have and who we have coming up down the road. We kind of have like there's no gimmies on the schedule whatsoever. They're all tough quality programs. Even if they're down a little bit, they're still solid programs. And then you hit the gauntlet of some big powerhouse teams coming up too. But we take it one day at a time right now. We just got to get better each day. And that's been really the emphasis. Everybody just getting better at the little things.
What's jumped off the page so far when you look at the Hammonton film, considering this is pretty much an entirely new program now that Coach Lancetta's over there. If you see it on social media, they built a new field house. They went back to like an old school style with like a modern day twist to their uniform. So it seems like this is a whole new era here for Hammonton football. What really jumped off to you when looking at their game film, looking ahead to Friday?
Yeah, I've known Coach Lancetta for a very long time, even when he was back coaching at Hammonton for his brother back in the day, back in the early 90s and all. And during his time at Rowan, and he was the guy who recruited our high schools down here and all. So I've known him for a very long time. I've had a great relationship with him. And, he's an old school smash mouth type of guy. He might be in the spread, but, he's a smash mouth football type of guy. And you can see that on the film. They look, they're a little bit on the young side. They got some seniors. I think they have like 15 seniors on the roster. But a lot of younger guys are playing. He's developing the program. You can see that. But they're playing solid football. They don't do a lot. They're not overly fancy. They're just trying to get it right before they get to that next step. You can see they're taking baby steps to get forward. And that's what good programs do. And but they have some good running backs. Number 5, I think, ran for 200 and some yards last week. Number 22 is a solid kid who plays defensive end and running back. They've really got north-south, and they're tough kids to play against, and they have some kids that played last year, and they had a tough season last year, but they got playing experience.
Yeah.
And they have a chip on their shoulder to show that they're not a 1-9 program, which, Hammonton traditionally has been one of the top programs in all South Jersey, especially in our area of the Cape Atlantic League part of it, and I see that he's trying to build that culture again, and in all reality, they're not really a down program. They had a bad year. Yeah. You think about it, a couple of years ago, they were one drive away from being a sectional champion and going to the state semifinal. Louisville just drove the field on them and scored the winning touchdown to win the sectional, and that was just 2 seasons ago. Yeah. So they're not that far off. I think a lot of people just get so caught up. Oh, they're 1-9 last year. But it's still Hammonton.
Yeah. Without a doubt, you were alluding to Joseph Scott and other guys like Cooper Delgazzo, who are going to be obviously a problem to deal with, considering what they did last week. So you mentioned the physical style that Coach Lancetta brings to that program. I remember talking to him over the summer. It just seems like it was like a renewed sense of energy for the Blue Devils, where we're going to get back to, we'll mix in some modern day stuff, but we'll go back to that old school approach of just smash mouth football. And I feel like that kind of aligns with what you guys do as well, where it's the basics. You mentioned before, blocking and tackling. Do you feel like this is a very similar style type of matchup? I know you already said that he runs more spread elements than maybe you guys do, but I feel like it's a very similar matchup between these two teams on Friday.
Yeah, both teams want to run the football. You got to run the football to win. You got to play great defense and run the football, because when the money games happen, that's what you got to do, especially in the bad weather that tends to happen at that point in the season. And, I think it's going to be a really tough, hard-fought game. We've had their number the last couple of years, so I know that's on their mind too. We don't want to be 0-2, so I expect both teams to come in with a lot of energy. They're getting to play a second game at home. We've still been on the road here. So I think it's going to be a classic Mainland Hammonton football game, just smash mouth, dirty, in the trenches type of game.
When you go on the road again, I know last week was Delaware's showcase game, but is it challenging to these kids, right? Especially the ones that are maybe new to playing a lot more, as you said before, where kids were injured, they didn't get preseason time, and you obviously have some new stars up front. The comfort of home, I think people maybe gloss over that a little bit in high school football, especially when it's a lot of local rivalries where the trips aren't too far sometimes. But you think that's also a bit of a factor this week, where you have to prepare these kids like, hey, we're going on the road again. We're not going to be waltzing in our own hall.
So like obviously everybody loves to play at home, and we love playing at the Corral.
Yeah.
But to me, like me personally, Hammonton's my favorite place to play at. There and Vineland are my two favorite places to play at ever. I mean, there's not a better field in South Jersey than Hammonton's football field. Frank Lasasso Sr. takes such good care of that thing. You'd be hard pressed to find a weed on that field. I've been on that field when it's been a torrential downpour and there's no water on the field. It just drains so well. It's just a really special place. They probably have the best snack bar in all of the Cape Atlantic League teams, what they have there. Back in the day when we play Saturdays, we would fight as a staff that who would get to go scout at Hammonton. And it's all because of the snack bar. But I think the kids, like, I think they enjoy going on the road. And I think part of it is that we play at 6 o'clock. So literally school gets over and we get on a bus. Yeah. So in the days when we used to play at 7 o'clock, you had some dead time that you had to account for and figure out what the heck you were going to do. Right. Where really the bell rings, school gets over, and we are on a schedule and a clock, But I think the kids enjoy going to different places from time to time and seeing it, I mean, everybody loves playing at home. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. And none of our trips are really, even the trip we took to Delaware, it was shorter than going to Rutgers and Somerville last year. Right. But, and most of our trips are maybe the maximum is 40 minutes, maybe, but they're all relatively short and you get home early, playing at 6 o'clock at night. But we're looking forward to it. I think Hammonton's really just a cool place to always play. They have a rich tradition in football. They always have a great crowd there. You're playing on the best field that there is in the Cape Atlantic League, a natural field. They're going to have a lot of energy with Coach Lancetta and being 1-0. It's going to be a fun atmosphere Friday night.
Snack bar is really selling me right now. And plus, if that field's that good, I might need him to do my backyard for my lawn for ahead of next summer.
Come to my house too.
that'd be really good. I wanted to circle back a little bit about how you guys are preparing for this game, and again, without giving too much away, what are your conversations like with your staff in particular? Considering I know there's been I know we talked about it a few weeks ago, leading into the season, where you had a few changes on the staff. Nothing too crazy, nothing too major, but obviously with some new voices. Some guys aren't there anymore. When you look at, I guess that staff meeting, whether it's right after the game on Friday, it's Saturday or Sunday, what are you really approaching with your staff leading into a game like this? Again, coming off a rare loss, it seems like over the last couple of years, where it's been like 4 combined losses.
Yeah, it's just we kind of just looked at the game and then kind of stripped it back down. What did we do wrong that was glaring? Was it coachable? Was it more players not understanding? Is it technique? We need to do a better job of coaching and teaching and things like that, and really emphasize those things. And really went back to kind of being more basic with a lot of stuff. Sometimes we tend to, and I know this from just being an offensive person my whole life, sometimes you get too far out in front and you forget about the little things that make it work, Right. And I think that's what our emphasis was this week. Like, we really looked at stuff and sat there on the whiteboard and just kept crossing stuff out. Let's not do this. Let's go back to this, and boom, 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 and it's still within everything that we're doing schematically, but kind of like bring it back, and making sure the kids are in good positions to be successful. That's the big part of coaching, is just making sure they're in positions to be successful. And then if they make the play, they make the play. Sometimes you get out athlete or whatever, but at least they're in a position to be successful. And I think we as a staff need to do a better job of that. That was the emphasis for us this week. And then getting on the kids about them and their roles and what they need to do better also. And, that's why you watch the film. Yeah. And that's why we film practice, and everybody gets to watch the practice films and so forth. So it was really just stripping back a little bit before we take that step forward. Like right now, we're more worried about ourselves right now than we are about everybody else. We got to get ourselves right before we take that step.
Makes sense. And along the same lines, have you noticed some of your senior leadership step up after a game? I mean, I can point to, John Franchini, among other guys, considering he's been a 4-year starter. He's seen the highs and lows from that you guys have had over the last 3 years. Did you notice any senior leadership saying like, hey, we're 0-1, but we're going to flush it down the toilet and all of a sudden move on here, and like, this is how we're going to do it? Have you noticed some of that Alaska?
Yeah. You know what it is with these guys? Some of them have played big roles over the last few years, but they had a lot of support around them and slowly through the years, those guys all graduated the program, and now they're really the guys on top of the mantle.
Yeah.
And they're in a different position now. They've had big parts, but now they also are the leaders of the program, and they've stepped it up this week too. Believe me, you can see it just in the effort that's in the practice field.
Mm-hmm.
But I think moving forward, I think it's just part of that learning process. It doesn't always come easy, and the kids learn by that.
Mainland at Hammonton on Friday. Be sure to check out that great field and the snack bar, of course. In addition to a great football game, we're hoping for Hammonton 1-0, Mainland 0-1, week 1 action. Still, you guys have played a game, and it's still week 1. Still doesn't make any sense to me, but we're going to keep rolling with it. But again, 6 o'clock, Mainland at Hammonton. Of course, your home opener next week, Coach, against Millville. Of course, we'll have that game on Cape Atlantic Live. So, good luck this week, and hopefully we're coming back. We're talking about, maybe had a nice little halftime snack in addition to a Mainland win on a Friday night as well.
Well, I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Chuck Smith with me here on the Chuck Smith Show, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. We're here every Tuesday night on Cape Atlantic Live. Be sure to check out the game for the home opener as well next week, Millville at Mainland, right here on this YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.